Predict, pick, and prevail in your fantasy football leagues with Nick Giacobbe and Nick Cap. From breakouts to busts, superstars to sleepers, these are the guys that will help you achieve fantasy glory. This is the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast.
We cannot hear you, Nick.
My apologies. My mic was
go.
muted. So it is week 10. It is the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. This is where you come and we give you our picks, our predictions, with the hopes that we help you prevail throughout week 10 and the rest of the 2023 fantasy football season. I'm your host, Nick Giacobbe. Joining me is Nick Cap. Nick, how are we feeling waking up for another live show, another Germany game, and we're in week 10. We have, I think it's five or 6 weeks in the regular season here. These are games you have to kind of start winning at this point.
You want to know who I got to put on the hot seat today? You want to know who's going on the hot seat? The NFL, because they've given us Bears Panthers on Thursday, and then they make us wake up early so that we could record our live show before the Colts and the Patriots. Then we're gonna get the lousy Zach Wilson, Aiden O'Connell primetime game, and then on Sunday night we're gonna go get the one of the biggest spreads of the week outside of the Dallas and the Giants at the Josh Allen led Bills face the Denver Broncos. So awful week. We're calling out the NFL this week because they got to give us some better games. If they're gonna make us wake up early, they better give us a good game. That's all I'm gonna say.
Now here's the
next season.
Well, here's the thing. I am going to call your bluff a tiny bit here. So the NFL makes their schedule before the season, right? So Monday Night Football, Bills and Broncos, I think when they're making that game, they're thinking, oh, the Broncos with Sean Payton might be a better team, interesting storyline.
Do you think they thought the Bears, Panthers, and Colts, Patriots were going to be entertaining games going into the season?
No, those ones I can't. Well, the Bears.
You could justify one of them.
The Bears had a lot of hype around them, and obviously the Panthers had drafted Bryce Young, I think, after, or they had the number one overall pick, something like that, when the schedule was made. So those I can kind of justify. But Jets, Raiders, I don't think anybody was high on the Raiders. Your Jets were supposed to have Aaron Rodgers, but still, the Raiders is the one that doesn't sit as well with me as the others. And the Patriots and the Colts, yeah, that one I don't really understand. I don't know what the rules are for these, Europe games and stuff like that, but I digress.
You know what? I'm going to cut them some slack because next week we're going to get Thursday Night Football, Bengals, Cincinnati, and then we're going to get
you said Bengals, Cincinnati. You said Bengals, Cincinnati, so I got to know who they're playing.
Bengals, Ravens. My apologies.
Bengals, Ravens. Okay.
And then Monday Night Football, we get Super Bowl rematch, Chiefs, Eagles. So I will cut them some slack, but I'm going to keep my eye on Week 10 for next season. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, week 10 will be the one that they have to kind of fix. All right, so this is the Primetime Fantasy Podcast Live. If you're with us now, wonderful. If not, that's okay. We're going to answer all of your questions for about the next hour. We do have a hard out at 9:30, so once 9:30 hits, we're out of here. So get your questions in before 9:30. And before we answer any of your questions or before we go into some injuries and preview and stuff like that for Week 10, we're going to talk about our little plug. So if this is your first time joining us for a live stream on the Sunday morning, thank you so much. We do a live stream every Sunday, normally about 8:30, might be a little later some mornings. So just stay tuned on our social media channels for that. But we will be live every Sunday morning to give you guys the best fantasy football advice that we could possibly give. We'll do start sits. We'll give you injury updates through every single game. We'll give you, we want to answer your questions. We had a lot of questions last week. We appreciate that. So hopefully we continue to get that those questions from you guys, and we'll happily answer them, and hopefully we help you set your lineup. So it's going to be every single Sunday on our YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. We appreciate you, those of you that do join our Twitter. However, you can't ask us questions over Twitter. That's not our fault. That is an Elon Musk X/StreamYard fault. We use StreamYard to broadcast. So with that said, if you do want to ask us questions, please go to our YouTube or Facebook feeds, and then you can ask us questions through there. If you're watching the live video, please drop a like on it, share the link with your friends. We'd appreciate that. And then if you'd like to support us throughout the week, we do drop at least one weekly episode, normally on a Tuesday, or usually, normally it's on a Tuesday. That'll be available on our all audio streaming platforms, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, or Anchor. If you're on iTunes or Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. We'd really appreciate that. If you'd rather watch and listen to the show like you're doing right now, go to our YouTube channel, Primetime Fantasy Podcast. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you're subscribed to the channel. Make sure to hit the little bell icon so every time we go live or drop a video, you're notified. And if you're watching any video, drop a like on it, drop a comment, share a link. We appreciate all of that. If you want to follow us and interact with us on all social media channels, please do. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram is PrimeTimeFFPod. Facebook and YouTube is Primetime Fantasy Podcast. If you do want to get start sit questions after our Sunday morning live show, you could tweet us. That's the best way to get it. First question, you know who Colbo? Gino. How do we feel about Gino this week? Nick, I'm going to let you take this one.
You don't want to take it as a resident Seattle guy? Okay.
No, I'm still waking up and my sinuses are a mess, so I need a minute to catch my breath.
Okay, so Gino gets to host Washington this week. Washington, I usually like spots for this where a team has to travel from one coast to the other. DC all the way up to Seattle. That's a big travel. It's a big time adjustment. But Geno Smith has been absolutely horrendous this year. From a fantasy perspective, he is currently sitting at the QB 24. He's averaging only 13 points per game. He only has 2 games over 16 fantasy points. It's week 2 and week 3. Since then, he's not cracked that total. So he has 3 games this year under 10 fantasy points. That is not justifiable to be rostered if you took the name and the offense out of that situation. So for me personally, I think if you have Geno at this point of the season, you got to pivot. The trade deadline in most leagues is the 18th. So you still got another week or so to get that done.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Seahawks guy, obviously. I'm not wearing a Geno jersey. I have my nice DK number 14 jersey on. But, yeah, he's looked pretty bad. He leads the league in interceptions right now. I believe it's 7 at this point, 7 or 6. I feel like he's also had like 3 or 4 fumbles that were lost on the season, so his turnover margin is pretty bad. On top of that, I think the Seahawks are a run-first team, and I think they're going to get back to that run-first offense because the passing hasn't been working too much. The line isn't able to block to give Geno enough time. And Geno's not really a scrambler. He's not the Russell Wilson that the Seahawks had for, 7-8 years when he was kind of in his prime, where the line could break down, but Russell Wilson could scramble out of it and make a play. That's just not Geno's play style. He is more of a pocket passer. He can scramble and run when he needs to, but he's not a play extender. So with that said, I just think it's time to kind of hop off the Geno train. And if you're in maybe like a 14-person quarterback league or a 14-person league, and maybe you drafted Aaron Rodgers and Geno and you didn't draft the back, and maybe on your waiver wire you picked up like Desmond Ridder, like maybe you don't have a backup. Maybe you have to start Geno, but those are our thoughts on Geno. All right. Moving on to Domo. Thank you again for the questions, guys. We're going to get to each one. If you're watching live, please drop a like on this video. Please share that link with your friends. Make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel or like our Facebook page or however you are watching. From Domo. Hey, guys. Good morning. Good morning to you. Half PPR. I was offered Bijan Robinson and Deontay for David Montgomery and DeAndre Hopkins. My other running backs are DeAndre Swift, Alvin Kamara, and Breece Hall. Thoughts on this trade?
I'm not a fan of it personally. Oh, no, you were offered. I would take that. I think DeAndre Hopkins has been a trap so far this season. And at this point, the last 2 games of Will Levis, he's been pretty solid, especially with the explosive 4-touchdown Will Levis first game. Tape tends to come out on these rookies and these like later round draft picks. Usually you give it 4 weeks until they really start to get figured out entirely. So I'm trying to fade him and get rid of him if you have him on your roster. And then David Montgomery, he's going to come back from the injury, and we're not going to know exactly what his role is in this offense. I know Nick and I were very high on him going into the year, Nick higher than I was. But Jahmyr Gibbs has arrived, and he looks phenomenal. If CJ Stroud was not really pulling away, it'd be him and Puka Nacua fighting for the offensive rookie of the year. So you got 2 guys that are going to be questionable for the rest of the season. And Bijan and Deontay are not locks either. But personally, Arthur Smith came out and said Bijan's got to get more touches and more usage in the game. I do think he's going to finish the season as a top 12 to 16 running back on the year. And then Deontay Johnson just had one of his best weeks of the season and has always been a PPR machine. So for half PPR, you're going to consistently get those points for the catches. So I think I would pull the trigger pretty comfortably on that.
I think I agree on Nick. I think Bijan Robinson has a lot of upside still. He's super duper talented. They still did draft him high less than like 6 months ago. And I don't think he's looked bad. He just hasn't gotten the volume that we'd want him to get. So it'd be different if he was fumbling every play or just not, or his yards per carry was like 1 yard per play, but that's just not the case. He's just not getting the volume that you'd hope for. I do love David Montgomery. I think he's super talented. I love following the money, and I love the production that we've seen from him while he has been on the field this year. However, he's had 2 injuries. Jahmyr Gibbs has looked pretty solid, so I think there is going to be more of a 50-50 split now rather than the 70-30 we were seeing with David Montgomery getting the bulk of that. And on top of that, I'm not a DeAndre Hopkins guy. In my fantasy and NFL career as a fan, I have been, but the Titans, I avoid all Titans. I'm not going to say the Steelers offense is lighting it up, but I think there's a higher upside for Deontay Johnson than David Montgomery, and same with Bijan Robinson. So I think I would pull the trigger on this trade. It could bite you in the butt like any trade, but I think I'd rather have the higher upside, especially because you already have a really solid running back room. You have DeAndre Swift, you have Kamara, you have Breece Hall. I mean, I think you could do this trade and then maybe trade one of those running backs and Deontay or a different receiver and then upgrade somewhere else, because you're only going to start probably 2 of those backs. And I think Breece Hall is going to have a monster second half of the season. DeAndre Swift's going to keep producing. Kamara's been awesome. So even if you do this trade, I think you can make another trade right after that. Moving on from Photo Golfer. Good morning, guys. I need to play 2 out of these 3. I'm assuming it's PPR. Tyler Lockett versus Washington, Malcolm Brown versus Atlanta, or Terry McLaurin versus the Seahawks. I think this is pretty easy for me, Nick. I'm going to play Lockett and McLaurin. I don't know what Malcolm Brown's like done, honestly.
I think Malcolm is meant to be Marquise Brown. Yeah, because Marquise has the Falcons this week.
So that's why I was a little bit confused.
Yep.
Okay, so Marquise Brown versus Atlanta with Kyler Murray. Am I wrong on that? Kyler's starting.
Nope, you were right. Kyler Murray
Kyler's starting. Terry McLaurin, Seattle, and Tyler Lockett. So I do want to play Terry McLaurin. I know that the Seahawks have pretty stout corners in Devin Witherspoon and Tariq Woolen, but Woolen hasn't looked he had a little bit of a sophomore slump, and Devin Witherspoon is not following receivers. So I think I would play Terry McLaurin because receivers have been kind of gobbling up some yards against that Seahawks defense. I would lock in Terry McLaurin for sure. And then I think I'd play Marquise Brown. It's your wide receiver 1 with a returning Kyler Murray. I don't know what kind of Kyler Murray we'll see. I know James Conner's returning too, but I think I would like to take the shot on that.
I think all these guys are in a high over-under week. I think if I were to bench one, it would be Tyler Lockett. You have seen some of the inconsistencies come back in Geno's play and in Tyler Lockett's fantasy production, at least. And Hollywood has been like a lot better than I think a lot of people realize. But he has not shown ceiling because of the quarterback play. If you take a look at his season, he has a four-game stretch over 16 fantasy points, and 2 weeks ago he just had 15. Last week, no Joshua Dobbs, so you could kind of take that one out of the equation. But Hollywood is still the wide receiver 20 on the year with no Kyler Murray. When he comes back, there's no way he's going to be a worse wide receiver than he's been, and he's currently averaging 12.5 points per game. So I think he's going to get up to 14, 15 rest of the season, and if he manages to do that, he's going to finish as a top 15 receiver on the year. So I'm more than comfortable locking him in.
My only worry with Lockett is we haven't gotten those 4 or 5 boom, boom, boom games, and it has to come. It really does.
But he's due. He's definitely due.
All right. Moving on. Next question. Darius Brown, Marquise Brown. I'm going to assume it's Marquise Brown, and Jahmyr Gibbs for T. Higgins and Rashad White.
I like Hollywood and Gibbs on this side of the trade.
I do too. I'm not sure who you have, but I would rather have Marquise Brown and Gibbs. I think with Kyler Murray coming back, Marquise Brown's value is going to skyrocket a bit, and I could be wrong on that, but he was one of my bust breakout players going into last year. I was telling people to trade Gibbs in the last week or two because I think it was time to trade one of those Lions running backs. T. Higgins just hasn't produced like we'd like to see him. He did have an awesome game last week, but now he's dealing with yet another injury. I think it's his second or third of the season. And Rashad White actually has been sneaky good. I said it last week that, he's had over, I think, 15 PPR points in 3 straight games. So I feel like I'm talking myself out of this at this point. This is a pretty even trade. I kind of like both sides of it. I'm not sure who. I would have to really look into the schedules here. because I think it's pretty even.
I think T. Higgins worries me because it's not just that he hasn't produced on the field. He's suffered 2 or 3 injuries this year that have sidelined him and ruled him out of games early. I mean, he was already ruled out this week. I think he was ruled out on Wednesday or Thursday. So he's been facing a ton of injuries. Rachaad White, like, he's on a very hot streak at the moment, but A, I don't think he's a very talented running back. B, I don't think the offensive line is as elite as they've played against some of this weaker competition in the last few weeks. And number 3, he has not shown the consistency over the full season last year to prove that with Tom Brady. This year, he has worked his way up to the RB11, and the last 3 weeks have been very solid. But outside of that, you do not see a starting running back. You see a flex play. And
but it's right out of the bye that he's been explosive. So I do have the schedule here. Do the Bucs schedule first. Titans are today. 49ers, tough one. Colts, Panthers, and then we're Falcons. And your fantasy playoffs for Rachaad White is going to be Packers, Jags, and Saints. Don't love the Saints matchup, but you got 2 good matchups in your fantasy playoffs.
It's not horrible.
Now let's look at Jahmyr Gibbs.
Definitely worth schedules.
Chargers today. Bears, Packers, Saints, Bears, and then your fantasy playoffs is Broncos, Vikings, and Cowboys. I almost see identical schedules here. You each have.
I don't know about that. I think there's a clear Lions easier schedule for the running.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Your fantasy championship is going to be the Cowboys, and then the Bucs are going to have the Saints. So they're both really tough matchups. The Lions are going to have the Saints, and the Bucs are going to have the 49ers. So those are your tough matchups. Then they basically have the same teams. The Bucs have the Falcons, Jags, Packers, kind of easy, and the Panthers and Colts. And the Lions have the Bears, Packers, Broncos, Bears again, and Vikings. I think I'd rather have the Lions schedule. But I wouldn't say the Bucs have a hard schedule.
I don't know. That's a tough running back room. I think they're going to be playing from behind in a lot of those games.
Who?
Good amount. The Bucs.
Maybe, but you get some passing work from Baker then.
We'll see.
I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this, Darius. Just go with your gut and whatever players you trust the most, because I think T. Higgins has a lot of upside, but me and Nick are still worried about the injuries. But when he's on the field, he's so talented, and the Bengals are heating up. The Bengals have a tough schedule down the stretch, but that actually doesn't worry me from a receiver standpoint. That tells me that the Bengals want to make a push to the playoffs and be that Super Bowl caliber team that they've been. They're going to have to pass the ball, and they're going to have to win these games. Yeah. So T. Higgins doesn't worry me. I do love trading for Marquise Brown like today before he steps on the field today. And I do love trading away Jahmyr Gibbs. I know they're the same package, but yeah, this is a real tough one. I know our job is to give you advice. I think Nick's going to lean on Marquise Brown and Gibbs. I think I'm actually going to lean on Higgins and Rachaad White.
Interesting. Okay.
You know who Caldwell? I'm in a 12-man, only quarterbacks to pivot from Geno or Kenny, Taylor, or Mack. My trade for Dobbs got vetoed. How did a trade for Dobbs get vetoed? It's absurd. Yeah, that's pretty tough. I mean, Taylor Heineke's been like, he could be solid-ish, but I would just keep Geno in at the moment.
Yeah, I agree with that.
From Jesus, he joins us every week. Thank you so much for that. We appreciate the people that join us every week and the new listeners as well. Remember, guys, subscribe on our YouTube channel, go to our Facebook, Twitter, all our other platforms, and make sure to keep supporting the show. Good morning, guys. Start Monty or Kenneth Walker. Also start 2 between Myers, Pickens, Judy, and Sutton. Let's go with that running back conversation first. I like Walker a lot, man. He's been a top 5 running back on the season. I think the Seahawks are going to get back into the more of running the football due to Geno's consistent interceptions, especially over the past month. Monty's been great when he's on the field, but he is competing with Jahmyr Gibbs. And it should be a high-scoring game. So I know I'm giving you reasons for both, and I like giving you reasons for both if I can, because I want you to make the decision, not us. But Kenneth Walker is the guy I think I would play. I think you have to play him every week, knowing that he's going to get a bulk of carries, and they love using him in the red zone.
Yeah, I agree with Nick. If this is a flex question between the other two, I would want Monty as one of the flexes over all these receivers. So if you can fit both in your lineup, do that. Otherwise, I'll take a look at your receivers real quick. Jacoby Myers, I am not playing him against the New York Jets secondary.
I won't either. I've been on the Jacoby Myers train, but I'm with Nick.
I think he's been phenomenal this year, but the Jets wide receiver matchup has been tough since week 3 for any team in the NFL. Even week 1, it was just the Dallas Cowboys week where it was really tough. George Pickens, you're looking at Pickens hosting Green Bay. That's a solid matchup. I'd probably play him over Judy and Sutton.
And I think he needs a bounce back game as well. He had a really rough Thursday night game. I think he's due for a bounce back. And he's been very good this year.
And you have Mike Tomlin coming off an extended week because of the Thursday night, so that should be good for him. And then we're looking at Cortland Sutton, who's averaging 12.9 last 3 weeks before the bye, 14.6, 19.6, and 10.9. Sutton's actually been much more solid. Maybe Sutton should have been my guy this year.
Maybe
he's only got one game under 10 fantasy points.
But Judy's also kind of done like the same thing. He's been averaging, I think, like 13, 14 a game. He's been like a cool like 10 to 13 points a week.
All right, so I am going to go with. I think your upside is Jerry Jeudy, and as much as
your upside might be Jeudy, I'm gonna play Sutton. I'm gonna play Pickens here though.
Yeah, Pickens, and then I think it's either one. That's fine.
Pickens has also been my guy, so I can't I can't go against him unless I really like my options. All right, our buddy Deshaun, who's with us every single week. We appreciate you, my friend. He says, "What's up, guys? Do I trade Zach Moss and Trey McBride for Jacoby Myers? And do I start Gabe Davis, Jerry Jeudy, Dotson, or Douglas at flex?" Let's start with your first one. Moss and McBride for Jacoby Myers. I would say no. I don't. I think that there's a lot of upside to McBride, especially if you're in a league where somebody really needs a tight end. And I would almost do that like 1-for-1, McBride for Jacoby Myers. And I want to see where Kyler Murray's throwing the ball today as well. Jacoby Myers will be playing with Aiden O'Connell the rest of the season, and although he's been productive, Jacoby being productive, that's just not a matchup that I really love most weeks. I would look for a different player if you can.
I agree with that. I think you could get more value than Jacoby Myers as well.
Next question. Do I start Gabe Davis, Jerry Jeudy, Jahan Dotson, or I can't remember Douglas's first name. It's slipping my mind. He's on the Patriots.
He's the Patriots guy.
I think I'd rather play Jeudy for the upside. I mean, Dotson has been kind of inconsistent. He's been like under 10 points for most weeks, and he's gone over a couple. Gabe Davis is the definition of boom or bust. I think I'd rather play Jerry Jeudy. We all think he should be the wide receiver one on the Broncos, but he hasn't looked like it. But the Broncos coming off the bye, their offense has kind of started to click-ish. I would go with Jeudy here. But maybe it's a safer play. Maybe I'm just too safe on this. That is the safe play. And I normally do go with the safe play.
I'm totally going the opposite. I think Jeudy would be my number 3 in this situation. I would go Jahan Dotson first. The last 2 weeks have been 25 and 17. He's heating up, and he's going to go up against Seattle, who Nick already talked about. The secondary is not living up to the standards of last season. And then my number 2 would be Gabe Davis. I know you get the inconsistency, but Gabe Davis's big weeks in game with a big spread, like the upside is there. The Broncos secondary has gotten better than that 70-point dud against the Dolphins, but they have not been fantastic. I do think Gabe Davis has the upside of multiple touchdowns, especially in a game where Surtain should be shadowing Stephon Diggs all game. That should really open up a big opportunity for Davis.
Cool. So I'm glad. I like when you have differing opinions.
Yeah.
All right. So from our buddy Joe, do you think JSN can consistently produce even with DK and Lockett? Absolutely not. And this is why I was worried about him going into the season. I said I thought he was a good dynasty play or pick and a good keeper pick. But in terms of week-to-week production, no, because Kenneth Walker is the main focus of the offense. And then you have DK Metcalf, who's going to garner his targets. And then you have Tyler Lockett, who's been just a model of consistency as a leader and as a receiver and how to do things right. But he's also been the model of inconsistency in fantasy football over the last couple of years. But he's, again, on top of that, Jake Bobo's also looked awesome. So I just don't think that you could play JSN consistently. I think you keep on your bench because if one of those receivers go down, like he slots right in there. But I don't think.
Yes, so that's the right answer. If one of the receivers is out, JSN is a very startable player. But as the wide, there's no wide receiver 3 in football that you can comfortably start. You can go through every single team in the league, look at their third best wide receiver from a fantasy perspective. It's not going to happen. There's only been one time in the last 20 years where 3 receivers from the same team finished inside the top 30. That was Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, and Juju Smith-Schuster a few years back. So you're really looking at a very unlikely situation for team. Although I will say JSN has started to heat up a little bit since the bye week. The points scored since then are 9, 16, 13, 12. Before that, he didn't have a single game over 9. So he has definitely been getting better, but I think a lot of that has been due to DK Metcalf and Lockett being a little banged up.
All right, next question. Deshaun, no, we did Deshaun's already. I'm going down the list. You know who? Caldwell. Darren Waller for Romeo Dobbs. I think at this point you got to get what you can with Waller. Oh, Josh Dobbs. Okay. Why did it get vetoed? Is Darren Waller's value? I know his value is low, but jeez.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. I'm sorry. If you are that's probably a league where everybody just hits the veto button on the trade, which I will say I openly hit the veto button on almost every trade. Jeez. Just because why make your opponent teams better? But at the same time, there is no reason to justify that. I do think if the commissioner is in charge of the vetoing, you should always be lenient because you cannot say that my opinion's more right than someone else's, unless if it's blatantly like Mark Andrews for Mo Alley Cox. Like if it's that lopsided, then yes, you step in.
All right, from Deshaun, 16-man league. Start at flex. Justice Hill, Jameson Williams, Rashad Bateman, or Alec Pierce. I'm missing H.N. badly. I am too, Deshaun. Look at our league. I'm missing H.N. badly. I'm starting some bum at running back. I don't even remember who I'm starting. I like to look for upside, and I don't see upside in Justice Hill because the Ravens have like 4 running backs, and he could score. This could be the 200-yard Justice Hill game. Rashad Bateman is the 3rd or 4th option on the Ravens at this point, so I don't want to play him. Alec Pierce is the number 2 option. Jameson Williams is roughly the 2 or 3. So I'm between Jameson Williams and Alec Pierce. I would just, coming off the bye, I would go with Jameson Williams, give him a shot. I think he's very boomer bust. But that's it. That's kind of where I would lean.
I totally agree. I think Jameson Williams would be like if we did our segments from last year, he would probably be one of my wide receiver flex player starts of the week. He's in the highest over-under game on the week at 48.5.
Nick loves the over-under games. That's one of Nick's gimmicks.
Yeah, you have to. Listen, the books know best, and the books are telling you this is going to be one of the highest scoring games on the weekend. If I told you it was Lions and Chargers, you would easily say the same exact thing. On top of that, Jameson he's not heated up at all. But you're starting to see his production and his field usage go up significantly. He's going up against the Chargers defense off a bye where they're going to reform the offense. The Chargers just played the physical team Jets, and they are on a short week because they played on Monday. So you're talking about a team with massive rest, massive offensive boom. I think that the Chargers are going to get rolled in this spot. I don't think they're going to be able to win. I don't think they're going to be able to compete with the Lions off of this week. And they also have the worst secondary in football this season for fantasy production. So Jameson should absolutely be in a 16-man league. He has to be locked into your lineup.
Well, I mean, if Justin Herbert is the guy that you say he is, he should still win this game. Shouldn't get rolled.
I don't know. That's a tough spot for anybody. Taysom Hill. You asked that.
All right, from Stanley. Now, this is going to be a really fun question because they're both me and Nick's guys. Nick loves his Taysom Hill. I like my Jake Ferguson. So, Nick, I'll let you make a case for Taysom Hill, and I'll pop over to Ferguson.
Did you see the Taysom Hill? I don't know if it was a real quote or a fake quote, but did you see the Taysom Hill quote? He said he hopes Zach Wilson could figure it out because quarterback is his 3rd position, and he's damn right about it. My guy is a fullback, running back, wide receiver, quarterback threat. Taysom Hill last 4 weeks has been the most consistent tight end in fantasy football. The last 4 weeks, he has put together 12.3, 16.8, 22.5, and 20.6. Forget the player. At the tight end position, have I told you over the last 4 weeks, a player averaged 18 fantasy points per game, and they were possibly sitting on your waiver wire. There'd be no question that Nick and I would call him the number 1 pick on the week. If I told you that tight end was getting 7.5 rushing attempts per game, he's getting 1 to 2 catches, he's throwing the ball in the red zone, and he's the biggest red zone threat for the team, you would absolutely lock him in. And then you throw in the fact that the Saints are playing the Vikings, who have one of the worst defenses in football. All the upside is there for Taysom Hill to be locked into your lineup. And I know Ferguson is a great matchup this week, but you pretty much get the opportunity to super flex and play two quarterbacks in your fantasy football league. You got to lock them in. I hate the questions about Taysom because if you do not own Travis Kelce, TJ Hawkinson, or Mark Andrews, he is the next best tight end that you can lock into your lineup.
I'm trying to find Ferguson's last few games, and I just can't find it on Fantasy
It's
Pros
22,
right
14 bye week, 3, 6, 15 in week 4.
Oh, I don't care about before the bye week. I care about after the bye weeks. After the bye week, he's been super duper consistent over 12 fantasy points in back-to-back games. I think it's going to continue. I think he's the number 2 option on that Cowboys offense now. When I said it, I forget if I was on the live show last week or maybe it was our midweek show. Jake Ferguson is going to be your fantasy championship a winner. If you win your championship and you needed a tight end off the waiver wire and you got him, this is going to be your fantasy championship winner. And I'm going to keep pounding the deck on this. And I do respect Nick's take about Taysom Hill, but I just don't see him keeping up with this level of consistency throughout the rest of the season. That's a lot to expect for the next 6 to 8 weeks. So maybe this week I'd take Taysom Hill, but the rest of the season I'm very, very high on Jake Ferguson. I think he is going to be a league winner. I think that is going to happen. From Stanley, PPR 12 teams. Do I play Zach Moss? Well, I need to know your options.
Yep.
I see you have this question. I also see do I play Tank Dell? Gonna bump up your question for a second, Stanley. So resubmit your questions, but give us some options, because if we don't know who you're, I can give you reason to play or not play literally any player, but I need to know what your options are. Otherwise, I can't give you a good take. From Za, what's good? Good morning. Thank you for joining every single week. We appreciate you. His question: should I trade Isaiah Pacheco for Tank Dell in a 10-team full PPR dynasty? Okay. Running backs are Eckler, Pollard, and Pacheco, Connor, and Mostert. Receivers are Hill, Jefferson, Cooper, Kirk, and Dobbs. So my first thought is, can we get Mostert off this team? He's kind of old. He has a lot of upside now, but it's just dynasty. I'd almost rather get Mostert off this team. So if you can maybe swap Mostert in, I would like to do that. If you can't, and we're just talking about this one question, I think I would, because Pollard still has a couple years on him. So does Connor, and maybe Mostert as well. So you can draft another running back. Your receivers are awesome, but Amari Cooper's 30. Tyreek Hill's going to be 31. Romeo Dobbs might be you might not have Romeo Dobbs in your roster next year. And I think Tank Dell's going to be a very viable fantasy option over the next 5 years. So I think I would, especially because I lean receiver.
I would not do the trade purely because of the lineup that you have. I think Eckler is starting to show the decline. I think Tony Pollard, they've realized, the Cowboys offense, that he cannot be the bell cow RB1. They're getting Rico Dowdle in there as well to try and not let him get hit as much. So he's not really the explosive gadget type RB2 that he was last year for the team. He's kind of come significantly back down to earth. And Pacheco, listen, if I told you in 3 years the Chiefs had a different running back, there'd be no surprise there. But if I also told you Isaiah Pacheco, running back for the best offense in football, is the RB9 on the season at the moment, it'd be very hard to trade him away just knowing that. As much as I love Tank Dell, I think you have a wide receiver core that's going to be locked in for 3 years in Hill, Jefferson, Amari Cooper, where you're not going to have to budge on really any of them.
You think Cooper's locked in for another 3 years? I don't know. He's 30 years old. Or 31, and he's been inconsistent.
Maybe not
Cooper's the name I worry about. I think Hill's good for another year or two. Jefferson's awesome. Kirk's solid. But you're gonna have to replace somebody in the draft in the next couple of years.
Going off of Nick's point, then what I would look to do is make a Mostert and Amari Cooper package and go try and trade for some younger pieces. Maybe you can get Tank Dell and
I would trade Cooper and Mostert for Dell straight up. In Dynasty.
I don't know if I do the package, but
in Dynasty,
I think you could get more value than that. But I know what you're saying. I think Tank Dell is going to be a very good NFL receiver for CJ Stroud. So I do think he's a good acquisition. I just don't think at this moment, I wouldn't say this year or next year, he's going to break your starting lineup consistently enough where I would really want him on the team.
All right. So Stanley, again, please resubmit your questions. Otherwise, we need to resubmit all your questions. Nick, you take this for 1 second.
Yeah, sure. Start to Joe Mixon, Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker. Also start Kincaid or Hill. My flex Hill, if you all suggest to sit a running back, to run 2 tight ends, 10-team half PPR. Between the two, I'm going to start Joe Mixon this week. I do think the Bengals have a shot to be without both receivers. They are a 7-point favorite in this game. So Jamar Chase, even if he does play, after they ruled out T. Higgins, they kept the line at 7. So the odds makers think that the Bengals are going to win and they're going to win big. If that's the case, Jamar Chase sits, Joe Mixon gets a bunch of touches this game. I will lock in. Then between Hall and Walker, it's a tough. But you're also talking about potentially flexing in this league. If you could start all 3, I'm starting all 3. And then I would play Taysom Hill at tight end, and I would bench Dalton Kincaid.
All right, so start 2, Mixon, Hall, and Walker. I love starting Kenneth Walker every single week. And again, I think Breece Hall is going to have an awesome rest of the season. Great matchup against the Raiders on Sunday Night Football. I'm going to start both of those 2. Then Kincaid or Hill. I mean, Nick's made a good case for Taysom Hill, so I'll lean with him on that one. He said, my flex is Hill. If you all suggest to sit a running back and run 2, definitely don't run 2 tight ends. I would never do that. Probably not. All right. From Deshaun, last question. You can keep asking more if you want, but if this is your last question, does he start Jerome Ford or James Cook? Man, this is a question because I do love James Cook a lot.
I don't.
The Bills don't love James Cook a lot.
Jerome Ford is going up against the Bengals.
The Ravens. I think I'd still. He's against the Ravens today. I think I'd still start James Cook. The Ravens defense looks awesome. The team looks awesome, but the defense looks awesome. And I think the Ravens is a chance they win this game by double digits. And I could be wrong. Cleveland's defense is really good too, but I wouldn't want to play Jerome Ford against that front.
Yeah, I want to see what the week looked like earlier this year when the two of these teams met. So they played in week 4. The Ravens absolutely blew out Cleveland, winning 28-3. So week 4, let's take a look at, was Jerome Ford the starter at this point? Is a great question. He was, and he had his second to worst game of the season as a non-starter. That tells me all I need to know, that James Cook needs to be the guy that you lock into your lineup.
All right. Next question we have from Ball Glove Blueprint. Thanks for joining us again, as you have been for a couple weeks. Pick one for PPR flex. Alexander Madison, who is fully the running back one now for the Vikings. Brian Robinson against the Seahawks, or Zay Flowers. Okay, this is a good one. I like this one. I know that Brian Robinson's got my crap hawks, and I know that Madison is going to have the Saints. The Saints defense is pretty solid. I don't want to play Madison here. I think I kind of like Brian Robinson. The Browns defense is pretty solid, and Zay Flowers seems like the 3rd or 4th option on this team. Although I do love his talent. Option 1 is just always Lamar running or passing. Then you have Mark Andrews, and they do like running the ball in the red zone with their like hydra of running backs. So I think I'd rather take Brian Robinson. I know he's going to be the running back 1. I know he's going to get the bulk of the carries. I think he's going to find the end zone. The Seahawks have a solid-ish defense, but the Ravens just racked up over like 300 rushing yards against them a week ago. So I think I would go with Brian Robinson.
Yeah, I think that's the right play. I don't love playing Brian Robinson any week, although he's been much better than I have predicted this year. He is the RB12 on the year, so he has been pretty solid.
He's just not flashy, and I just think that's why people don't like him. But I mean, I like him because he's consistent.
Yeah,
he's consistently getting you like 80 yards, a couple receptions, and his touchdown potential.
Your upside play is Zay Flowers. He did not play great against the Browns the first time that they met, but he has been one of the more. He has probably been the most consistent rookie wide receiver, not named Puka Nacua.
Not named Tank Dell.
Tank Dell's had more up and down. I would say Puka has been more, definitely been the leader from the rookie class. But I don't know, man. Brian Robinson feels like the right play, but it doesn't feel like the fun play. If I want to have some fun, I'm playing Zay Flowers.
It's not the fun play, but it's not the fun play, but it's the play that's going to win you your matchup.
I love Alexander Madison. He's the least fun football player to put into your fantasy lineup.
Yeah, he's not fun right now.
There's nobody that's less fun than him.
He's not fun. Okay. From Stanley, I have Michael Gallup at my flex spot because my wide receiver's on bye. No question. So can't really help you with that one.
Here's a follow-up.
Oh,
PPR, for the full personnel, could I play Kincaid
okay.
or Hill?
PPR, could I play Kincaid or Justice Hill in my flex spot? Okay.
I think that's Taysom Hill because you was talking about that.
Oh, it's Taysom Hill. I gotta scroll up now.
Kincaid or Gallup or Hill or Gallup. I would bench Gallup.
I would bench Gallup too. I'd play Taysom Hill.
Yes, correct.
Okay. From who Caldwell, play the Bengals defense over the Lions or Chargers D. Don't play the Lions or Chargers D because I think it's going to be a shootout. But there's also it's going to be a shootout, but there's also a chance there's a pick six thrown. Stupid that I say that, but anyway, play the Bengals D. If so, which do I drop? Can also pivot the Falcons or Pats. I'm playing the Patriots. I don't have a lot of confidence, but I think I'd play the Pats over all these defenses. I don't really want to test CJ Stroud right now. I'll test Gardner Minshew against the Bill Belichick defense. I think I'd rather play the Pats defense over all of them. And I'll be honest, just drop the Chargers D. I don't see a week where I'd want to play them because the defense is pretty garbage and they're going to be in a lot of shootouts. So I don't think you should even carry the Chargers D on your team.
I agree with that. I would not take the fluke Jets game as what you should expect for the rest of the year. The Jets offense has been the worst in football. Looking at the rest of the season for the Chargers defense, I mean, it is brutal. You're going to get Detroit. Green Bay is a fine matchup, but that offense can put up points. It's too talented. Baltimore, you're not going to play them. New England, Bill Belichick exposes your best piece. I think that's a fine game. Denver, you typically do not like division matchups. Vegas, you don't like division matchups. Buffalo in the playoffs, you're not going to play that. And then Denver, again, you don't play against your division. That is not going to be a fun stretch for the Chargers defense. I would not play the Lions defense against the Chargers as well. Chargers offense, very explosive. Nick laid out all the points there. Bengals, again, do not want to chest CJ Stroud. They are in a trap spot. They do have a sandwich game. They just played against the Bills in what was a must-win. And then after this week, they could play the Ravens in prime time for what is going to be a division championship, home field advantage game for the playoffs or not. So very tough spot here for the Bengals defense. Do not love it. In a game where they're missing their best offensive pieces, so you will probably see the defense out on the field a little too much. So the first three that you said, I'm taking them all out of the equation. I know Nick talked about the Patriots. I think I probably lean there as well. Although I could see the Falcons forcing a couple turnovers on Kyler as he starts to get back into it. James Conner coming off injury. You could see fumbles happening. So I think there's the most turnover potential, but Colts at Patriots in Germany, the overseas does bother me, but I mean, I saw a funny stat where overseas Bill Belichick has won an average of 35-4 or something like that in his career. So we will,
nice.
Even though they're all with Tom, but we'll go with that.
All right, got more questions, guys. Do want to let you know we do have a hard out at 9:30, so we got a 15, 20-ish minutes, so get your questions in now. We're going to keep answering your questions. We may not have time for an injury preview for the rest of the week, so that's okay. Make sure to check your lineups for who's out and who's in. We're going to keep asking those questions. And while we're doing our little plugs, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like, or YouTube or Facebook, make sure to like this video. If you're on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Hit the little bell icon, guys, so you get notifications every time we go live, every time we post a video. We do have a new podcast every single week, normally on Tuesdays. Sometimes we go live for that podcast, but normally it'll drop on Tuesdays. It'll be on all audio streaming platforms, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, and Anchor. If you're on iTunes or Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. If you'd rather watch and listen to our weekly shows, they are posted to our YouTube channel, Primetime Fantasy Podcast, where you could be watching right now. And if you do watch those videos, make sure to drop a like on those as well. And as for the Sunday lives, we'll keep doing these until the end of the season, roughly around 8:30, 9-ish, depending on the week and if there's a Germany or London game. But we'll let you guys know about that every single week. And the live shows are on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. All right. From Mike Duke, Gus Edwards or Josh Downs for flex full PPR. I like this one a lot. It is a true flex play. I think just the honest answer is your safe play is Gus Edwards because I love feeding him in the red zone, and your boomer bust play is Josh Downs, and that's just kind of how I view it. It just depends on whichever route you kind of want to go. I'm a safe play kind of guy, so I probably would play Gus Edwards, but I think Nick's more of a boomer bust, high ceiling, low floor guy with flex spots.
I usually am, but I still would lean Gus Edwards. I do think the consistency leans his way. I think the touchdown upside has been there. The last 3 weeks for Gus Edwards have been 21, 30, and 17. that type of ceiling play, any player has that 3-week stretch. They get locked into your lineup. So I am definitely going to lean the Gus Edwards way.
All right, from Stanley, PPR. Could I play 12 personnel keeper? We did. Taysom Hill. Hill over Kincaid. I've had another wide receiver Gallup. I'll drop him, but players aren't by. Okay. I would drop Michael Gallup, honestly. Like, I don't need to roster him.
I agree. I know you might have to play him, but
all right. No questions at the moment, so keep dropping those questions for the next 15-ish minutes. Barkley or Moss? Saquon Barkley. Yep, every week. So we're gonna go to our game-by-game preview. We're gonna do injuries and maybe a player we like, player we don't like. And then when we get questions, we will answer those instead. So we got a game in about 10 minutes in Germany. The Colts at the Patriots. Josh Downs is questionable with a knee, but he's expected to play. Alec Pierce has an ankle injury, questionable, but he's also expected to play. For the Patriots, Demario Douglas was questionable with an ankle injury. He's going to play. So those are your injuries. In this game, I don't love a lot of Patriots. I'll play Stevenson. I'll play Demario Douglas if you need to in a flex spot. And for the Colts, I'll play Jonathan Taylor. I'll play Michael Pittman. That's all I really want to play in this game. And I will stream the Patriots defense as I'm doing in a league.
Yep, totally agree with all that.
From Mike, pick one for flex, half PPR. DK Metcalf, DeAndre Hopkins, Kelvin Ridley, Tank Dell. I don't want to play Hopkins. I'm out on the Hopkins train.
I'd go DK.
I think I'll go DK. He's a wide receiver 1 on his team, and the Seahawks kind of need a get-right game.
Yep.
If you want to get funky, play Tank Dell. That could be a shootout. Speaking of Tank Dell, Houston Texans at the Cincinnati Bengals. So the Bengals are a little bit banged up. Jamar Chase has a back injury. Says he's a game time decision. I think he's going to play, though. If they're without Chase and Higgins, that's going to be pretty bad because Higgins is out with a hamstring injury. As for the Texans side of things, really no injuries. Nico Collins is listed as out. So that's more work for Tank Dell. So, yeah, I'm really in on the Tank Dell train today, guys. I think you should go play some Tank Dell. From Mo Diesel, half PPR, Gabe Davis or Josh Downs rest of season. I think I'll play Gabe Davis knowing the type of offense that he's on.
Rest of season, it's definitely Gabe Davis. You will see the lows, you will see the highs, but if you're in a best ball league, he's like the perfect play. And when you ask rest of season, that's pretty much what you're talking about. He's also going to be more of the touchdown upside, which will benefit your half PPR a lot better than Josh Downs, who will probably be bigger receptions.
Yep. Damon Pierce is also listed as out. So a couple injuries in this game. So my first thoughts, Nick, is that I really like Stroud and I really like Tank Dell because I think it has shootout potential. So I really like Stroud and Tank Dell. On the Bengals side of things, a little worried about Burrow, but you probably can't bench him unless you have, a backup like Stroud. But I kind of like Mixon more now. I know we'd answered a couple Mixon questions, but knowing that Chase is really that banged up, I thought he was good to go. Man, I think I like Mixon a lot more now. Now that I think about it. Saints at Vikings. So Justin Jefferson is not playing.
Probably make it back next week.
Next week, yep. TJ Hawkinson is a rib injury. He's expected to play. He's questionable. No other real injuries to really talk about per se. I believe Josh Dobbs is starting. Nick loves Taysom Hill in this game.
Always love him every week.
Is Michael Thomas playing?
He is playing.
He is playing.
Yep.
He's out of the slammer.
After throwing bricks.
That's
Derek Carr's job to throw bricks, but
his hands looked like bricks last week with 0 fantasy points. But I'll play Kamara. I'll play Taysom Hill. I'll play Olave. Vikings side of things. I think you could play Hawkinson and I think you could play Addison. But that's if you have to play Madison. You can, but I don't love it. I'm not jumping for joy for that one.
Yeah, I think Madison's going to, and I was a very big believer in Madison.
Tough defense too, so it's not even like a good matchup.
A lot of people think he's going to heat up, especially because Cam Akers is gone now. Cam Akers wasn't there at the start of the season, and it did not justify his 13, then his 5. He had a good game with 18, then 10, and when he started getting filtered in the lineup, it was the same inconsistency that you saw. So I do think, I'm a Madison owner. If someone reached out to me and wanted Madison in their lineup, I would happily trade him away. I do think you're going to get those inconsistencies, and games like this is where you bench the RB 24 on the year.
All right. Next game, the Green Bay Packers at the Pittsburgh Steelers. This just screams like 16-10 or something. I feel like I saw these teams play already this season.
Yeah, you haven't, but it feels like it. I know.
I really don't want to play anybody on the Packers, just Aaron Jones, I guess. And then for the Steelers, I mean, I'll lock in Deontay Johnson. I'll lock in Pickens. I maybe will dabble with Najee. Freiermuth has a hamstring injury, and he's out.
Yep. I'm all on board with you.
Titans at the Bucks. Will Levis is Tannehill's questionable, but I think Will Levis is starting. No matter what. And that's the only injury we got. I spoke about Rachaad White earlier in the show. I don't love playing against the Titans front seven, but Rachaad White's been very productive, so I think you still got to play him. Probably you're still playing guys like Mike Evans and Godwin. And for the Titans, to me, it's just Derrick Henry. Like, it's always been Derrick Henry for me, and the Titans are one of those teams I just kind of avoid in fantasy.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think they have enough firepower. Although I will say, if you do need a flex play this or a starting quarterback this week, I would like to see. I do think Will Levis is a guy you can plug this week. They are on a long week. It's been 10 days. They played on Thursday. They're going up against the Buccaneers that just allowed 40 points to CJ Stroud, 470 yards, 5 touchdowns, best rookie quarterback performance in the history of football. Following that, Will Levis is big on DeAndre Hopkins. It's a good combination for a solid fantasy week for Levis.
All right. Our next game, my Google Chrome is not cooperating with me as I try to switch tabs. I'm not sure. Can you see questions, Nick? Because my Chrome is just...
I can't see questions. Do you need me to pull it up?
Yeah, I can't. My Chrome is just like being a pain. I think there's a chance it might crash in the next minute.
That's okay. I'll hold down the fort if that's the case. Madison was good for a while, but then he started to go downhill. Yeah, you kind of saw the inconsistency a little bit early on. He was getting touches, but he wasn't getting enough production. At the end of the day, he does deserve to be slotted in as an RB2 in your lineup because he has seen 12 touches a game plus. He's not going to lose that role to anybody for the rest of the year. There's no free agent running back that they're going to sign, and by the end of the year is going to take over that role. It's not worth it for the team. So I think he's the most unsexy fantasy player. Like, he's going to give you the touches. He should not have a 1 or 2 point bust. But he's not going to be the explosive RB that Dalvin Cook was for a while. So for me personally, I'm not a fan of him as much as I was going into the year. But I do think he could have a fine fantasy finish rest of the year. He'll probably finish somewhere between that 18 and 28 range, which is not fun for fantasy, but that's pretty much where you drafted him to be anyways. I'm stuck at tight end. Should I keep Michael Mayer or pick up Okonkwo or Bellinger? Let's take a look. So I'm not a fan of Mayer. I don't like the play. I'm not a big fan of his personally. I don't think he's as talented as the other two tight ends that you listed here. So let's take a look at Okonkwo. You have the Titans, who he has not been great, and the tight end position has been awful this year for fantasy football. He's been fine. Then Danny Bellinger. I believe he's the Giants tight end. I did not see Darren Waller perform on this offense. I did not expect Danny Bellinger to perform. So of the three that you have listed here, I would go Okonkwo, then Mayer, then Bellinger. I
would roll with Mayer, but I don't like any option. You're just hoping for a touchdown at this point. Do go to let you guys know we have a 5-minute hard out at 9:30 to get all your questions in right now. You know who Caldwell Addison.
Hey, you can't jump that important question from our moderator.
I am jumping that question right now because that's not a question we need to answer in the next 5 minutes when we're pressed for time. Jordan Addison, Brandon Ayuk, Zay Flowers, or Jahan Dotson. Pick 2. Assuming this is PPR, Ayuk seemed like the wide receiver 1 over there in San Francisco, which bums me out. But I think I'm going to lock in Ayuk. Then it's kind of tough. Addison's been really, really productive, so I kind of want to find a way to slot him in there. But I think the safer play is Dotson.
I'm going Ayuk and Dotson as well.
Okay. From Jin23, you got Keenan Allen as my wide receiver 1, and I need one for wide receiver 2. I have Pittman, Deontay Johnson, DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin. Who should I put as my wide receiver 2? Thanks. I would love to know who's in your flex spots because I would love to get 2 of these guys in. This week alone, I would probably rank them Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf, Deontay Johnson, Michael Pittman.
I agree. The only 2 I'd flip is Pittman and Deontay, but I mean, we agree. Terry's the start.
I feel like Jonathan Taylor. I feel like Bill Belichick's going to try to shut down the wide receiver 1. He kind of always does.
Sure, that's fair.
So that's how I would rank them at least. Now I will throw this question in there. Did the Jets make the playoffs? No, because the AFC is too loaded.
I think if they're in the NFC, they make the playoffs. The AFC is far too loaded. I think that they have a chance to finish 10-7, but they need Rodgers back 4 weeks before the season's over, which is
you know who called about Curtis Samuel being back doesn't shift Dotson interest. Nope, not worried about Curtis Samuel in the slightest bit. From Jin, I have Christian McCaffrey playing with Kamara with Joe Mixon in my flex. Yeah, beautiful. Please don't put a receiver in your flex. You're awesome. That's awesome. Good job. We literally have 4 minutes left, so keep bringing those questions in, guys. Gonna have to pause questions in about 2 minutes, probably. But for now, we'll do a little bit more injury preview. For the Niners at Jags, Deebo Samuel is going to play today. He missed a couple weeks with a hairline fracture in his left shoulder. I mean, this game is this game. I mean, you're playing your guys. For the Niners, I think you're playing just about everybody. If you can bench Kittle, I would. I'm benching Kittle for Jake Ferguson. And as for the Jags, I mean, you're playing Etienne and Kirk and maybe Ridley.
I like it. I like your call of benching Kittle.
Take the name out of it. He's the 4th or 5th option on that team at this point.
He's tight end 6 on the year, but I know I got
you. Next game, Browns at Ravens. Injuries in this one. Keaton Mitchell, running back, rookie. His hamstring injury is expected to play in this one. I mean, I don't love playing your Browns in this one. If you could bench Jerome Ford, I would. If you could bench Amari Cooper, I would. If you do have a viable option. And as for your Ravens, I mean, you'll play Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers, depending on your other players, and Lamar. And I would consider the Gus Edwards.
I agree with that.
Falcons at Cardinals. Kyler Murray's returning, and so is James Conner. Both should be locked up into your lineup. As for the Falcons, obviously Heineke is starting. I don't see anything on Drake London. I don't know if he's playing or not.
I'll pull it up.
But I guess this week I would play Kyler Murray at quarterback if you need to. If he's your backup and you want to slot him in there, I would play Marquise Brown and I would play James Conner. As for your Falcons, I think I'd only want to play Bijan Robinson. I can't trust anybody else right now.
I agree with that. Just give me a sec as I look for London real quick.
Okay, I'm going to try to run through the rest of these games.
He is healthy and going to be playing this week.
I still don't want to play him.
I agree.
Lions at the Chargers. David Montgomery came off the IR with a rib cartilage injury. He's going to be good to go. Joshua Palmer is on the IR, I think. So for your Lions, I'll play Montgomery. I'll play Gibbs. I'll play Goff. I'll play Laporta. I'll play Almonra, and I'll consider flexing Jameson Williams only in deeper leagues. And as for the Chargers, you're just playing your Chargers. You're playing your stars. There's nobody that I would recommend besides your stars.
Yeah, I think the one you can get away with. I'm a little more confident in Jameson Williams than Nick. I think he can be locked in, especially in your deeper leagues. And then on the Chargers side of the ball, I think this is a good spot where you play your tight end.
Nick, I know you got to go in a minute or two, so I'm going to run through these very quickly. Giants at Cowboys. You're not playing
any. Going if you have time. That's fine.
I'm going to run through these really quick. Giants, Cowboys. No Giant should be playing for your Cowboys. I'm just playing Pollard, Ferguson, Dak, and CD.
Agreed.
Commanders at Seahawks. For your Commanders, I will play Terry McLaurin. I'll consider Jahan Dotson and Brian Robinson. For your Seahawks, I will play Kenneth Walker. And I will play DK Metcalf. The other receivers, I would try to bench if you can, because they have not been consistent enough.
Yep, totally agree.
Jets and Raiders, Sunday Night Football. The only Jet I want to play is Breece Hall. For the Raiders, the only Raiders, I mean, I think you have to play both Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs, but don't expect big games out of them. And I would play the Jets defense as well.
I think Jacobs could be locked in for a very big game.
Interesting.
Jacoby Myers belongs on the bench. I would say Devontae Adams, you can't bench him, but
Don't expect it.
My take is aging like fine wine. I would also play Garrett Wilson. He has been very, very consistent this year. He has just not been the wide receiver 10 that you drafted.
I forgot he existed until I saw Joe's comment, if I'm being honest with you. Okay. Final game, Monday Night Football. Broncos at Bills. For your Broncos, I will consider flexing Judy and or Sutton and possibly Javonte Williams, but I don't love any of them. For your Bills, you're just playing your Bills. You're playing your Josh Allen, your Stephon Diggs, yada, yada, yada. And Kincaid's fine. And James Cook is fine. All right. So quick plugs before we get out of here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching the live shows every Sunday, 8:30 or 9 o'clock. We'll let you guys know we were 8:30 for these early games. The live show is on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. We want to answer your questions, talking about fantasy football. Thank you for everybody that joined and supported. Make sure to drop a like on this video and any video that you watch in the future. We do one show a week. It goes on, one show plus the live show, but the one podcast show goes on all audio streaming platforms, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, and Anchor, normally on Tuesdays. If you're on iTunes or Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. If you'd rather watch and listen to that live show, YouTube Primetime Fantasy Podcast, subscribe to it, hit the little bell to get notifications, and drop a like on any video that you do watch. If you have any more starter sit questions or just want to interact with us during the week, go to our Twitter, PrimeTimeFFPod. That's where I can answer them for you. Thank you guys for joining. Enjoy your week 10 and best of luck in your fantasy football matchups.